So hi, everybody. I'm Holly Rosen-Fink. I'm president of the Westchester Jewish Coalition for Immigration. It's great to see you all. On behalf of all of us at WJCI, that's my dog, sorry about that. And he got in the video. Welcome to our first pop-up series on refugee resettlement. We planned this event in response to your genuine interest in stepping up to save lives. In the past few months, thousands of Afghan refugees were forced to flee danger and come to America. WJCI stepped up to mobilize our community to do this integral work, and so many of you have expressed interest in our work, and we're very grateful. Tonight was created for you, and we'd love you to get involved in our efforts. Just yesterday, WJCI successfully notified 5 host groups that are welcoming Afghan refugees imminently. These groups are from all over the county, and they've successfully applied for funding and been approved for microgrants pending meeting the criteria. I'd like to remind you to stay on mute and please place your name and affiliation in the chat box. And also let us know what stage you're in of forming a host group, if you're in action or thinking about it. And please note that we are recording the session tonight and we'll make it available to share tomorrow. And we'd love for you to share it with your friends, family, and your community members. Now my WJCI teammate, Marty Michael, will take over and tell you about our guests and a bit more about the format. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Holly. Before I introduce Kaylee, just a bit about questions tonight. Kaylee will leave about 10 minutes at the end of her talk for you to ask questions. You can raise your hand. I'll call on you, unmute yourself and ask your question. And Margot will do the same at the end of her talk. So now to introduce Kaylee. Kaylee Brennan is no stranger to refugee welcome. She first began working with newcomers while running summer programs for refugee children in her hometown as a teenager. She completed a master's degree in refugee protection and forced migration through the University of London while managing a shelter for asylum seekers. Later, she spearheaded a nationwide campaign to recruit more citizens to volunteer as refugee sponsors, and coordinated a large refugee sponsorship group that has welcomed 11 families from both Syria and the Democratic Republic of Congo since 2016. She has hosted Ride for Refuge in her community 2 years in a row, a national crowdsourcing fundraising campaign to raise funds for continued refugee sponsorship in her community. The 2 successful events raised over $80,000, primarily using online platforms and social media to campaign. Kaylee is currently the Director of Rural Settlement with the Pictou County Regional Enterprise Network, an economic development organization in Nova Scotia, Canada, with a focus on immigration. She supports the integration of newcomer families by fostering welcoming workplaces and communities. Kaylee, the floor is yours.
Awesome. This is so exciting. It is wonderful to see all of the faces that are here, and almost teared up when you're explaining the movement that's happening right now and the number of people that are coming forward, and you have 5 host groups ready to go. It's a really exciting time. So kudos to all of you who are interested in this and getting involved. So yeah, I'm going to share a slide deck with you tonight, and I'll try to go fairly quickly, but feel free to stop me, or if you have questions, we can take those at the end as well. And I'm happy to come back. I'm happy to share my contact info as well if you want to follow up or have other questions. Tonight, I'm talking specifically about fundraising, but I have done a lot of, we call it sponsorships. We have sponsorship groups, I think in the same way that you're calling them host groups. So other resources that I have, or if you have questions, as you guys are forming your groups or thinking through what it could look like, I would be more than happy to share anything that I have. We were just saying there's no point in reinventing the wheel on any of this. So many people have done this before, and it can be quite daunting at the beginning, but there's lots and lots of good people that are on standby to support anybody that wants to get into this. So with that, I will share my screen with you. Now, forgive me, I'm using an iPad and I don't usually, so if I seem a little, my tech just might be a little glitchy here. Share my screen. Okay, and I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint, and I won't be able to see you, so just let me know if you can see it. Can somebody just give me a yes?
We can see it.
Yes, we see it.
Perfect. Okay, great. I'm going to play this here for you. So yeah, I'm going to chat a little bit about fundraising tonight. I'm going to keep my eye on the clock here, and I'm going to specifically talk about digital fundraising or using online platforms for fundraising. And but first, I'll tell you a bit about myself, and probably the most important thing to take away from this is that I'm not an expert in fundraising in any way. I'm not a fundraising professional. I'm just a person that cares really deeply about this work. So if I can fundraise and do these things.
Lots of just small stuff that you can't even talk about, just going over at night and being there. and
Would
taking
everybody
out dinner.
please
So
make
Mom
sure
has to
they're
come
muted?
besides-
Somebody is not
besides
muted.
just Dad.
I'll
Right.
mute everybody.
So,
Okay.
Sorry,
All
Julie,
right.
but yeah. I had to mute
That's okay.
everybody.
No, that's all good. I think I'm back.
Okay, you are.
Good to go.
Yep, good to go.
Awesome. Yeah. So essentially what I'm saying is I am not a fundraising professional. We've had some great success fundraising, and I'm just going to walk you through what that did look like for us. And hopefully there can be some lessons learned and some good takeaways, but you shouldn't feel intimidated. It sounds like we've raised a lot of money, and we did, but most of us as a part of this team really didn't know what we were doing. So that is my background, mostly frontline work with refugees in the settlement sector. And I have been involved in a number of private sponsorships. And one of my roles in particular was coordinating a really large group. So starting a sponsorship or a host group from start to finish is something that I've done a couple of times, and fundraising is a piece of that. So like I said there, I'm a reluctant convert to fundraising. Many people don't like asking for money, but you can do it. So our main fundraiser that we've done for the last couple of years is a national fundraiser called Ride for Refuge. And it is hosted by a large foundation, and any charities across Canada that are serving displaced populations can enter to participate in this fundraiser. So it is traditionally an in-person biking and walking event that has switched to a more virtual model. And charities are able to, they enter themselves as a charity, and then how it works is that you select team captains who recruit team members, and they each decide to raise a designated dollar amount, and they're asking essentially for pledges from their community to support, whether it's a 5-kilometer walk or a 50-kilometer bike ride. They make a pitch, they ask for support, and it's really all done online, even though they might do their event in person. The platform itself is provided by the host charity, and I'm going to show you a screenshot of that in a second. But the host does keep a large percentage actually of what you raise. So they keep, depending on how much you raise, they'll keep between 15 to 20 or 25% of all of the money that comes in exchange for offering you this platform, and they provide all of the marketing and all of the tech support to pull off this event. And so I had done this previously in a few different roles, but I had never been the event organizer. So in 2020, we decided to do it here, and we set out to raise $25,000, and we actually raised $40,000 or $47,000 through this event. And then we did it again this year, and we raised $35,000. So we saw lots of large dollar amounts come in through this event. And I can walk you through a few more of the details of the event itself, but this would be more difficult to replicate because it is a national event that we're able to partner in. But I'm going to give you some other examples of online platforms that you could use on a smaller scale. So this is where through this event, I decided that fundraising is actually fun. And it can be quite scary. Certainly our first year that we did this in 2020, I had never been the event director, and I was extremely nervous about saying that we were going to do an event and then not actually being able to get to the dollar amount that we had said. I had a deep fear of failure, but we were able to pull it off, and it actually ended up being a lot of fun. It was a cause that people were able to get behind, and the whole community ended up participating. And so it can be a lot of fun. I have faith that you guys can have a lot of fun with this. And so I'll just talk you through some of the different things that you'll want to think about before you get going. So in any fundraising scenario, I think the first thing that you really need to do is make your case. And even if that's amongst your small host group or your team, what is your case? What is it that you want to accomplish, and why do you need the money to do that? And so in this case, you're looking to provide really tangible support for refugee families for their first, I'm not sure how long yours is, ours is a year. So having that case in writing is really, really important. That is what gets people on board, and not just your donors, but your actual team of people that are coming together to do the on the ground work of what this looks like. In terms of fundraising, I think it's really important to set yourself a dollar goal and work backwards from there. So my understanding is I think that groups currently need $5,000. Is that right? To participate in this program?
That's correct. They need 5,000 to start, and then they can apply for our matching grant.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so looking at, knowing that it's a very concrete number that you have to work towards, the easiest way that we've been able to do that, especially in this event, is just breaking it down by person. So you have your group, your host group, or your congregation, and having people commit to fundraising, setting up a fundraising team. And essentially, the more people you have on the team, the less each person is responsible for making. And it's a really easy way for people to wrap their head around the numbers. And you're going to have some folks that will go above and beyond what they've committed to, and some that will struggle to get to where they want it to be. But it sets a baseline for what you can ask people to work towards. I think another really important thing is choosing a timeline with an end date. So having a campaign like this, it can't go on forever. It's really helpful to have it be 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, but a time limited campaign that you pull off. And I'll get a little bit more into that at the end, but pressure really works for people. So saying, and a countdown, being able to say, we're 6 weeks away from being able to reach this goal. We're 4 weeks away from being able to reach this. That sense of urgency really, it stirs people to make movements. So choosing an end date for when you'd like to see your funds come in. And then lastly, but really the most importantly, is recruiting a strong team of people that agree to fundraise with you. So creating a case for why they want to do it or get involved. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a second. But reaching out, it doesn't even have to be a large team. It can be 4 or 5 people that agree to support the fundraising aspect of this work. So think about who those people could be, and really just approach them with essentially what your case is. And so I'm going to share the next slide. Some of my slides, I'm giving you some examples, and I'm not sure how big they'll show up on your screen. So if you're having trouble reading them, I'm going to read some pieces out loud, but also at the end, I can share my slides just as a digital copy so you can go through them yourselves. So this is an example of our case that we made, that we shared with who we wanted to be team captains in participating in this event. So it was pretty simple. We've described here, what is the Ride for Refuge? Who is Pictou County Safe Harbor, which is the name of our sponsorship group or host group here locally. We've shared exactly what our goal was. So our goal was to raise $25,000. We believe if we have 12 teams that raise $2,000, we can get there. If we have 25 teams that raise $1,000. So just really essentially framing it up in different ways to break it down into more manageable bites for people. So we've laid out what the goal is. We are explaining very clearly what they can do to help us and what that looks like. So there's their basic duties is recruiting some team members, fundraising, and leading their team. And then what their next steps are. So having a really easily packaged this, essentially fit on a 1-page document front and back that you can hand out or email to people to make your case and to get them on board to agree to fundraise with you. All right, I'm not going to pause for questions. We can save them at the end, but I will just talk through a couple different options in terms of online fundraising. So my example that I'm speaking about is this national fundraiser that has its own platform and it's fairly sophisticated. And again, you pay for that. They take a percentage of that, but you do get great marketing materials and they provide a lot of support. Probably the easiest kind of individual crowdsourcing platform is GoFundMe, and most people will be familiar with that. There's several other options out there, and you can research if there's something that seems better or will work better for you. They have different rules and different ways that they work. GoFundMe, again, it's probably the most generic and most well-known and pretty easy to operate. So that's a great option if you want to create your campaign using that platform. People will be familiar with it. It's well trusted, and they offer, you know, PayPal and secure transactions. And that's it. I would recommend that as a platform to use if you're going to build something just locally. The other option is that you don't have to use an online platform. If your congregation has ways to give digitally online anyways, you can just as easily use those. So you can execute your campaign on Facebook or online, and we'll get into that in a second, but you can just direct people right to your donation page. So a lot of our faith-based communities here, mostly from the Christian and Catholic community, a lot of their websites have a place where you can just donate. And you can just as easily drive people back to those websites and use those platforms, as long as it's going into a fund that you can access for your group. So a couple of things to think about is that whether or not you want to just use a crowdsourcing or fundraising drive, or if you want to tie it to some sort of event. So in our case, Ride for Refuge, people still do participate in an activity. There is a day of type of event, and we have a snack afterwards and a get together. But that's a lot more work. So pulling off something event style, you might see dollars come in, and that might be a great way to engage your community, but it will definitely be more labor intensive. I do think you can just as easily raise the funds that you need just with a purely crowdsourcing, pushing your campaign online. So that's something to consider. The other thing to consider is the admin fees and support of using different online platforms. So in the Ride for Refuge example, we pay them a good chunk at the end for their support in executing the campaign. GoFundMe takes 3%, so it's quite small, comparatively speaking. Or if you use your own platform that you have integrated into your websites, you're obviously passing over that admin fee portion of things. And then obviously just the last thing to think about is your return on investment. So I've had people approach me before about wanting to do their own Ride for Refuge, and how could they do that, and could they build their own website, and could they do those things? You could do any of those things, but I think in fundraising, you always want to think about how much time you're going to put in and what dollar amount you're going to get back for that. So another example, in Ride for Refuge, you know, you can ride your bike or you can walk, and they've given the option to do other activities. Some people wanted to bake things, that's fine, and they were welcome to do that, but it's a lot of time and effort for potentially a little return in terms of the dollars that they'll get back. So those are just some things to keep in mind as you're planning a campaign to drum up some dollars. So I'm just going to show you a couple of screenshots of the different websites. So this is the Ride for Refuge website. It is quite sophisticated. You can see here the amount of money that we raised. You can see the number of participants we had and the teams that were involved. And if you scroll further down the page, you can see all the team members and the participants, how much they've raised. It's really a full meal deal. And I'm not sure if there's something similar that exists where you folks are located, but if there is, it's something to look into. It is a lot of fun. Here's an example of a GoFundMe page that somebody has also done for us locally here. And so you can make your pitch right on their platform. You can share it on your social media, and then people can donate directly through there. It shows your donations that are coming in and keeps track of where you're at in your goal. And then lastly, this is just a screenshot. So for us, we work very closely with the United Church, and the United Church has a donate button on their website, and it takes you to a platform that we use in Canada called Canada Helps. And from there, you can just enter your dollar amount, and it will go directly into the church's accounts. So if you have something like that, it's a great tool to use. Donating online is really a preference for a lot of people. Some people would rather just give cash, but most people that use online banking or buy things online, this is a really simple and easy way to do that. So getting into the world of social media, where most of these campaigns and asking for money, where you'll really get the ball rolling here. It's an extremely, extremely powerful tool. I think any of you that are on social media in any way, you know that. We see the way that news spreads or misinformation and all sorts of things, especially in this day and age. So it can be used for better or for worse, but it has incredible potential. So a couple of the different networks that you could consider is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. A lot of the young people are on TikTok. I don't know how to use it. But the advice that I would give you is to really think about where your greatest reach is and your primary audience. So in my experience, and this could be different depending on your location and your network, most people are still on Facebook. A lot of the younger generation may not be, they may be more on Instagram or TikTok, but they're also not who your primary audience is. So when you're looking for donations and donations of large sums of money, you don't have to worry too much. Most young people aren't making very large contributions to big fundraising campaigns. So in our experience, we primarily used Facebook, and it's been really useful for that. Most people still have their largest friend groups on Facebook. And with the ease of being able to reshare public content, that is what we've used. And that would be what I would say is still the easiest at this point. All right, and so getting into making your pitch. So if you've decided on your platform, your group has made a GoFundMe, and you've thought about your case before you've put your team together, it's time to make your pitch. And this is the part that's hard. This is where you're asking people for money. So two things that I think are really important in online fundraising. You need both. So the first one is a really persuasive and personal public pitch that you put on your own page and include a link so that people can easily donate. It's one thing to say I'm raising money for this. That then means that people have to directly reach out to you and understand their next steps. But if you include the link right there, make it really easy for people so that they have no reason not to. Encourage people to share your posts. You can just write right at the top, please share this widely with your networks. And many, many people will share what you've already put out there. I think the most important thing here is include your why. So why are you doing this? Why is this important to you? Or why should it be important to your social network as well? And you will see a big difference. I'm going to show you a couple of examples in terms of the engagement that people will have with your content. So make that persuasive public pitch, but as you do that, and maybe do that first, but it just as important is having a personal direct ask to your friends and family. And you can do that still on Facebook or via email. And what I often do is I've made my pitch, and then I go through my whole friend list of everyone that I know and think about, okay, this is something that this person, I know they've given to something like this in the past, or they gave to me last year. And I'm going to make sure that I send them a direct message that says something personal to them, that this is why I think they would be interested in this, and ask for their support. And that again, if you don't like asking for money, that is tricky. But the worst thing that can happen is that they say no. And actually, overwhelmingly, people will say yes. So share your link, say what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then you're giving them the option to give. And if they say no, that's okay too. And yeah, I think this last point is really important too. The people in your social network and the people that you're going to share this with, they care about you, and you're connected with them on these platforms because you know them and you have a relationship with them in some way. And they can easily be convinced to care about what you care about because they care about you. And so it's just a very simple ask, and you're giving them the option of giving. So here are a couple of examples. And again, I'll share these slides later if these end up being a little bit tricky to read, but I'll just read a couple of pieces out for you. So here's a Facebook post that this person has said on October 2nd, I'm walking in Ride for Refuge to call attention to some people and priorities that I feel strongly about. Although it takes a few hours of my time, I know it will make a difference. By participating in the ride, I'm speaking for people who have little or no voice and often get left behind or ignored. In this fundraising, I'm supporting Safe Harbor. So this is a pitch. This pitch is still fairly generic. It's pretty vague. She hasn't given a lot of direct details about the work or why it's important. And the other thing that's really important to notice here too, she hasn't given a link to her fundraising page. So she's put this out there to her social network, but then there isn't a really easy way for people to follow and find the platform that she's using to fundraise. And I'm going to show you a couple of other examples. They're longer. And again, I'll pass these on afterwards. But this woman says, you know, Ride for Refuge this year is for Pictou County Safe Harbor. Since the inception of Safe Harbor, we've sponsored 10 families. Pictou, our first family, arrived in 2016. Many of us have maintained close relationships with them. She goes on to talk about the reunion of two brothers that came through the work of Safe Harbor. And so there's her why. And it's very obvious that this work is important to her. You can see in what's been boxed in there that the close relationship with the family is important, and that this has brought her joy to be able to bring these types of reunions of the two family members. So she's given her why. She's made a really persuasive pitch. And at the bottom, she's included her link. So there's a really easy way for people to click on that link, follow it, and go ahead and make a donation. This one is similar. So this person has said why they're participating in the event. I think one thing that's really great to notice in her pitch here on that third bullet down with where the cursor is, she says, as a newcomer myself and know the value of community support. And so that's her why. And she's given people reason to care about what she cares about. So she's listed all of those things there to donate. She's got her link. She says, thank you. She's, you know, got her hashtags and other pieces to make it findable. And last example here, this woman is actually a choir teacher of a lot of the newcomer kids. So you can see her reason that she says right here. In 2019, I had the privilege of welcoming newcomer families to our community in the best way I know how, in song. And so her choir had sung to the new families. And this is a really meaningful experience to her, which she's then using to share with her social network about why this matters. So she's given a good reason. She's included her link there at the bottom. All right, I think I'm doing okay on time. I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of tips and tricks or some strategies that I have used in our last couple of years in doing some of this, and then we'll open up for some questions. So the first strategy, and really the most effective strategy, is storytelling. So first of all, as I've been saying, share your own story. Why does it matter to you, and what connection do you have to this cause? Your online community needs to feel that connection. They need to feel that this is important. And then secondly, do you have any stories of individuals who have already arrived or have had similar experiences? And just one note there, that it is really important to have people's consent in sharing those things, and that they feel that it really is their voice and not yours in telling those stories. But I will say that people do love a success story. So people love to hear about other families or individuals that have, you know, arrived 2 years ago and they're working or settled and their kids are in schools. If you are able to point back to any situations like that, it really helps get people's buy-in. So here's an example that we used in 2020. A lot of the newcomers that had arrived actually participated in the fundraiser together with us, and many of them shared their stories as a part of that. So this man, his name is Emmanuel. He's Congolese. He came and he was previously a nurse. And he just shares a bit about his story raising his family in Zalika refugee camp in Malawi, and then his journey to come to Canada. So he shared that. He's asking for funds at the bottom. He's shared a link there himself. And actually he's participating in the fundraiser on behalf of Safe Harbor. This one is another story, but in this case, this woman gave permission for the volunteers to share her story on her behalf. So she's not participating, but she's sharing her story and sharing her successes, and then encouraging donations towards a volunteer that she's close with named Mama Sue, and her link there is at the bottom. And those stories, when we did that campaign in 2020, we saw a super high level of engagement with those stories. They were really well liked, and they were shared repeatedly amongst the community. Another thing that we did this year in terms of storytelling, we shared less of family stories that had come, but we looked at the volunteers that have been volunteering their time with our group. So this is a guy named Tyler. He has recently joined our community, but he has done refugee sponsorship previously in Ontario. And so we shared a photo of who these volunteers were and then really why this was important to them. So he says it's important for those of us with the means to give our time and money to help those who have been robbed of everything. It's important to me to send a message to other Canadians that there is something you can do to mend the damage wrought by conflict, instability, and climate change. And so we did volunteer profiles of the different people participating in the event last year. And again, a really high level of engagement. So if you're able to use storytelling for your group or your community in any way, it's a really powerful tool. The second one here is visuals. So use visuals often in digital fundraising. They really help engage your audience, and they also help your post be more visible. So it will show up, as higher priority or more frequently on people's Facebook news feeds if you include pictures. So whether that's, a picture of the family that you're being paired with, or a picture of your group that's doing this work together, find ways to use pictures. You can also include little graphics or clip art, and you can easily create your own graphics on websites like Canva. So just going back to this, this is very, very simple, but it's colorful and engaging. And there's a website called Canva that you can easily put together little graphics like that. And you don't have to be a graphic designer at all or really techie in any way. And it gives you a template and you can just insert the content, but it will really increase your visibility. Video is also a really effective tool. I was going to show you a little video that we put together this year, but I'm going to save that and I'll just send it in an email afterwards. Tangible price tags is a great strategy to use. People really love to feel as if their dollars have very real impacts in people's lives. So give examples of exactly what their donation could buy, and you will find that very, very appealing to people. So an example of what we did is giving them these graphics saying, what can your dollars do? And then seeing if you give $25, you can cover the costs of mittens and a toque. If you give $50, you cover the cost of 2 boxes of diapers. If you give $100, you take care of their power bill. So finding very tangible items and attaching price tags to them. And this is not a new invention in any way in fundraising. It's very successful in many large organizations, but just thinking up what those dollars could represent for people, it's a great way for people to feel like it's their dollars are really going to do something. This is probably my favorite one, and where we've seen the most other engagement is the thermometer effect. So it is so satisfying for you as your group that's fundraising, and also for your online community to see the needle move or see your thermometer rise or any other indication that you can give of your fundraising progress. So find a super easy visual way to show people what your success looks like, and use those progress reports really frequently. So if you have 4 weeks that you're working towards this, every couple of days, say, well, I'm just going to show you. And even as I was making this PowerPoint yesterday, I felt very satisfied seeing all of these slides. So this was our campaign this year. We shared we're at 6%, then we were at 19%, then we were at 41%, then 50, then 65, then 70, then 82, then 93, and then we hit 121%. And so when you have started this campaign and people are going to begin to see your posts, having regular updates like that really incentivizes people to keep giving. So they want to see you reach your goal, and knowing that their dollars are going to move the needle is a good way to keep people engaged online. And so last strategy here is rinse and repeat. So out of those different tools, a good fundraising campaign online just uses a mix of those strategies frequently and repeatedly. So we shared stories of people, we would find a visual, we would give price tag items, we would use those thermometers, and I would do a post every couple of days, and it helps the momentum. So the people within your community feel engaged in what's going on, and they want to see the post that's coming next. They want to know where you guys are at. And so use those frequent repeated intervals over your set period of time. and then watch for engagement and respond. So like I said, in 2020, we shared a lot of family stories with their permission, and that was really, really successful. So people wanted to know more about them, and forget fundraising. It was just a great community engagement tool for us as well. And making welcoming communities, it had many, many benefits, but watch and see what people are picking up on and just keep going. And my last slide that I'll share with is, when in doubt, find some babies. So this was one of our strategies that we had this year. This year was a lot slower going for us in our initial fundraising, mostly because a lot of our organizers had babies. So we were getting much less done on a daily basis. And we kept thinking we weren't going to be able to make it to our goal. So we got to the place where we pulled out all of the stops and we put in a team of babies called Crawl for Refuge. And we used our babies to fundraise. And it was a really successful strategy. These babies raised $6,000 out of that $35,000 this year. So just a funny story to end on. Sometimes you get desperate and you're looking for different things to do, and getting creative sometimes has really great rewards. So that's my presentation in a nutshell, but happy to take any questions that people have.
Thank you very much, Kaylee. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask one question that was in the chat, then we'll let Margot talk. And then at the end, if there's more time, we'll do some questions. And if not, if you would put your email in the chat, people can ask you questions by email. The one question that did come in early from Laura was about Ride for Refuge. If you know if it can be done virtually with people at home on their exercise bikes or riding alone because of the pandemic, and does Ride for Refuge work internationally? Is it something that we could use here?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it is now a virtual event. It did traditionally it was in person, and it was just biking and walking. After the pandemic, they did what's called, virtual. And they also had, they called it Ride Freestyle. And so they let people choose different activities. Some people did things like that at home. They would say that they were going to bike for, 17 hours over their 3 weeks or whatever it was. So there is that option. I don't know if they do international, but I do chat with the CEO fairly frequently, so I could touch base with them, or even if they don't, if they know of any other foundations that might do something similar.
That would be fabulous. You were wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Don't go away. There will be questions for you.
I'll be here.
I'm sure when we're done. Let me introduce now Margot Golos. Margot writes that she began her fundraising career in Elmira, New York at the age of 10. Her first successes in this field began with selling raffle tickets for Hadassah in honor of Israel's 10th birthday, Girl Scout cookies, and Passover candy for her Hebrew school. These early successes led to a volunteer career in South Florida with her JCC and Federation. After leaving her career in geriatric social work, Margot moved up north and embarked on a new career in fundraising, first in major giving at Combined Jewish Philanthropies in Boston, then at Mercy Center in the South Bronx. Margot retired several years ago, wrapping up her career at the Jewish Federation of the Berkshires. Since her retirement, her volunteer efforts have been focused on immigrant relief, including a trip with me to the border to Brownsville, Texas, and Matamoros, Mexico, just before the pandemic started. I'd also like to add that Margot has offered to run private tutorials with anyone who would like that. She'll do role-playing training with you if you'd like to do some role-playing on how to ask for money. And with that, I turn it over to Margot Golos.
Okay, thank you.
You
Hi.
can, yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay, hi. So although I've participated in many Zooms, I've never been a presenter. So I have a little bit of anxiety about this, maybe comparable to anxiety people have about asking for money. Kaylee, first I want to thank you for your passion, compassion, and your energy. It's just wonderful to see people of a different younger generation so involved in this project. So the title of my presentation is, and it's basically a reiteration of what Kaylee said, but it was titled The 4 Questions of Fundraising, the who, what, where, when, and how of asking for money. I'm going to start out first with a definition of what is fundraising. Fundraising is one person asking another person to help a third person by giving money. That's basically what it is. And it is fun. And the more success you have and the more time you, the more tries you have, the more confident you get. So the why, Kaylee talked about your case. Tell your story. Why are you giving? Easy for me to talk about. All my efforts for refugee resettlement are in honor of my grandparents who gave up whatever meager life they had in Eastern Europe, came to America for a better life. They weren't welcomed so graciously here, but they plodded on. Highest was there to help them. And now I want to pay it forward and help immigrants today. That's my basic story. The what? I think, Kaylee, you used an equivalency, what your dollars will buy. You know, a lot of people will say, well, what are you going to do with the money? If I give you $100, what are you going to do with it? Well, of course, you want to tell them about the match, that whatever you give will be matched by another organization up to our first $5,000. But I have a ladder of giving. This will be the 5th campaign I'm working on to raise money for immigrants. I did 2 with Marty. I did 1 with my daughter, with Hearts and Homes. So this is the 5th one. So basically what I say here is a $25 donation will buy a week's supply of non-food items. Now, what are non-food items? Toilet paper, Kleenex, laundry detergent, because SNAP, which is food stamps, won't cover those items. So if somebody wants to give you $100, they'll basically be giving you money so a family can buy all those non-food supplies for a month. The what? Here's another one. If we need to raise about $2,000 for rent, that comes out to about $65 a day. Last campaign I ran with Hearts and Homes, we raised over a month's rent. I asked people to donate a day of rent, $65, a week's rent. Somebody gave me more than a week's rent. It's one thing I want to say is in my lifetime, I'm a bit older than Kaylee. In my lifetime, I've raised money for many organizations. As a paid professional, Odile knows me. We know each other from the Mercy Center. I've worked in the Jewish community, the secular community. I've never had the response I've had, the positive response I've gotten when I ask people to help with refugee resettlement. Incredible. Okay, so we did the why, the what, the how. Okay, the how, Kaylee, you talked a lot about the dynamics of online giving. I'm much more traditional. I have people Zelle me. Right now, Holly will have to talk about when we get started, how do people give money? Do they send me checks? Do they Zelle me money? Can they do it online? The when, Kaylee also talked about that. There's the need is imminent. So a lot of times when you're talking to someone about giving, you want to put a deadline, like, I know you need time to think about this, but could you get back to me by next Monday or Tuesday? So now we're going to go into the ask. That's when you ask someone for money and you try to close the gift. I don't know my audience, but I assume people have worked possibly UJA campaigns, synagogue campaigns. Has anybody worked at radio stations where people call in and give? Those are much easier to do, the radio campaigns. But some of the language in fundraising has come to me over the years. We talked about fluency when it came to the culture, acculturation, and how we have to be sensitive to the Afghans and how they adapt to our culture, how we adapt to their culture, how we develop cultural fluency. Well, I'm going to help you, not just today, but if we meet up one-on-one, on developing some fundraising fluency. And one of the most important words is, besides please and thank you, is join me. When you're giving the case for giving, say, please join me in helping our community settle Afghan refugees. A few other questions I want to ask, and I can't see anybody here, but why do people give? People give because they're asked or solicited by someone they respect. It's a personal ask. With all the work I've been doing in the community, most people have said to me, specifically in the last 3 years with immigrant relief, most people have said to me, I'm so glad you asked me. I wanted to do something, but I didn't know where to give. So your audience is waiting to be asked. Most people don't give because they're not asked, or they're not asked personally. I mean, I don't know about you, but I must get, even when I unsubscribe, so many solicitations by email, and I still get so many solicitations by snail mail that go right into the garbage. So the personal ask is so important. One minute. Oh, at the end of telling the story, and when you're getting ready to ask for the money, make sure you stress that this is a financial contribution that you need, because dollars are going to fuel refugee resettlement. Marty will tell you, when we were raising money to go to the Mexican border, people wanted to give us old clothes. They wanted to bring us over diapers. We needed dollars. And right now, our prime focus is not on collecting old linens. Our function right now is collecting on dollars. Collecting dollars, that's the engine of the campaign. When you've asked somebody for money, I'm going to just role play for a minute. Odil's there. So Odile, I've been meaning to call you. I know how much refugee challenges resonate with you and your family. I'd like to ask you to join me by making a financial contribution to refugee resettlement here with our group in Riverdale. And once you make that ask, take a deep breath and wait for the recipient of your spiel to answer. I just want to check my time for a minute because I don't want to get too much into the weeds. The old traditional ways is when I wasn't comfortable asking people for money, my solicitations weren't that good. I'd say, oh, I'm so sorry, I have to ask you for money and you really don't have to do this, and maybe this isn't a good time. But you know what? I just want to tell you what I'm doing, and would you give us some money? And I need this money by the end of July. And do you think you could give $100? And I would just go on and on and on. Be personal, be concise, be direct, and then be silent. Those are the elements of the ask.
Okay, Margot, what I'd like to do, if it's okay
Okay.
with you, is go to some questions.
Sure.
Because we only have a few minutes. Let me ask
Okay.
one question that's directed at Kaylee, and then we'll open it up for questions to both of you.
Okay.
Kaylee, Frank Pearson asked, does the thermometer and rinse and repeat work for annual campaigns rather than for a shorter campaign?
Yeah, that's a great question. In our experience, well, Ride for Refuge is an annual event, so it does happen once a year, but the runway depends really on your group and when they want to get going with it. The event always happens in the first weekend of October, but some groups get started as early as June in their campaign lead up. We really didn't get started until after August this year, and somehow in a kind of a 6-week frame still pulled it off. I think it could be both. I do think even if you have an annual campaign going, people love to see updates on where things are at, and that thermometer effect I think would still be fairly effective.
Okay, if anybody would like to ask a question out loud, just unmute yourself and I'll call on your name and I'll call you in case a few people unmute themselves at the same time. No questions. Shall I tell a little story, Margot, that we both know about?
I had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Credit card fees.
Oh,
So-
yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually just texted my friend when I saw that come in, because she is the one that started that GoFundMe campaign. And I just need to scroll up. I'm not sure if it covers that credit card fee or not, but if everybody's still on the line in a couple minutes, I'll jump back in if I can get an answer to that.
That's great,
Yeah.
because it's a big difference between a straight 3% and plus 3.5% for credit card fees,
That's right.
sometimes 4%.
I will just check in on that.
I can
Thanks.
tell you from Facebook, where I do a lot of my fundraising, that they charge 3% and no further fee for using the credit card. So that's how Facebook does it. And they work through Stripe, if that is of help. Just talking about how effective telling the story is in fundraising. When we went down to Texas to the border, one of the people who came with us was an older woman who was bumped up to first class, and she was sitting next to a conservative looking Texas oil man. And they got to talking, and he asked, what are you doing in Texas? And she told the whole story of what was going on at the border and what was going on the other side of the border and what we were going down there to do in detail. And as the plane was landing, he reached into his pocket and he handed her 10 $100 bills just because of the story she told. And we all assumed that he was not the kind of person who would have been very happy with immigrants coming across the southern border as a Texas oil man. But the story was the ask. She didn't ask him for money, and boy, did he give her some money. So that's my fundraising story.
And Marty was in some ways a shill. As I said, I've never met with such enthusiasm as I have in these 4 campaigns I've done in the last 3 years. As a matter of fact, when I send out an email, people will write me back and say, do you mind if I send this to my mother's cousin's aunt who lives in Toronto, actually? It became like a chain letter, just it snowballed. So if maybe that will help you have more comfort in asking people to join your efforts. It's such an easy ask. And you know what I was going to say? When you want to compile a list of people, in the old days, we used to go through a Rolodex or a phone book. I go through my contacts on my phone, and it's so easy. I pull up the contacts. I can send an email real quickly to people. They Zelle me the money back. Most of them Zelle me or they send me checks. It's amazing the enthusiasm for helping with refugee challenges, because we weren't even doing resettlement. We were just, we were doing such challenging work. Marty does it all, still does it. So.
So
anyway.
thank you, Kaylee. You just did what I was going to ask both of you to do. Margot, would you put your email address in the chat box?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So that, and Kaylee just did that. So anybody who has questions can write to them directly or to us, info@wjci.org. Holly, yes?
Yes, I have a few questions. Someone just asked me about corporate matching. How does corporate matching get set up? Kaylee, do you? Yeah.
Me? Yeah. Yeah, actually in this fundraiser that we had done, there is an option for like corporate sponsorships too, that you can have corporations like sponsor the event more so than donate. They would get some advertising back in return. It's definitely something that you could approach corporations to do. We did try that our first year. But just our first year we did it was COVID. And so a lot of businesses didn't have lots of extra money, depending on what field they were in. We didn't get a big response. We do have like a corporate sponsorship letter or donation letter. Again, I'm happy to share all of the resources that I have with you guys. And if anything sticks or you want to adapt it, but there's definitely big potential in getting more money from corporate donations or other foundations, getting a foundation to agree to match dollars for you. If you can leverage that, it's a great asset.
Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret, you want to answer that?
Well, I think the important thing is, will donations go to each group individually, or do they go to Westchester Jewish Immigrant Coalition? Because corporations are going to want to know if there's a 501c3. I don't want to get into the weeds, basically. Okay.
Thank you, Margot.
I'll tell you what.
We do have an answer, Marco. So let Holly answer you, because we do have an answer to that.
No,
Okay.
Marty, you can take them.
All of the host groups either are a 501c3 or they work for a
Okay.
fiscal sponsor who is a 501c3. So it is always appropriate for a corporation to donate.
When I was doing work with Hearts and Homes, money came through donor advised funds, and Hearts and Homes was on donor advised funds approved lists. So are we on those approved lists?
At the moment, monies for us are coming through a fiscal sponsor, one of the synagogues, as we apply to become a 501c3.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Kaylee, I have a question about TikTok.
Yeah.
Well, I have teenagers. I mean, I know it's important. And Snapchat too, but I don't know if you want to get into Snapchat, but I mean, yes, why don't you? I mean, if you could just please talk about some of these other tools that.
Yeah, some of them are
come into
actually even
play.
like I'm a generation removed from them as well.
Yes.
I would say a lot of people, probably next biggest to Facebook would be Instagram. Most people of a broader generation range would be on Instagram. And we did find Instagram successful as well in some ways. The one thing I just found challenging is you have to reformat everything, and Instagram is much more visual. So there wasn't a lot of space for, being able to make a pitch. It's really more photo driven, or you really need to redirect people back to your platform. So TikTok, in my understanding, I'm really not on it much, is very video driven. So lots of different videos, and kids do different dances and routines and different pieces. There'll be little trends that go through the app that everybody will be doing, a lip sync of something. So in my mind, it's really more for fun. Like it's more of an entertainment app than it is a communication app. But that being said, I'm not really on it. So
what about, I mean, I actually just got a reminder today that last year I raised $1,000 for Neighbors for Refugees last year. And Frank Pearson, the president, is here. Thank you for coming, Frank. Could you talk about that? I mean, how effective are Facebook fundraisers?
like using the actual Facebook platform for
At your
fundraising.
birthday, you're going to raise money for your charity.
Yeah. I've seen it done. I've never done one myself.
That's how I've raised most of my money through Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it like is a great potential for people. I think the one thing that can just be a challenge with Facebook fundraising is that it kind of just gets caught up in the noise of Facebook. Like it's not really a separate thing from Facebook. So Facebook is so overwhelming sometimes in all the information that's coming at you. But I know people that have had really great success with them. I've never used it for a full campaign.
Definitely. Marty and I both have.
I
Marty.
think it's also an age thing, actually. The older you are, the more likely you are to be on Facebook rather than the other platforms.
That would be really my impression of things. And that is why we've really stuck with Facebook as our primary medium, because it is the people between the ages of 40 and 75 that are going to give money to your to your campaigns. So finding where
I have
most of
to
those
admit,
people
I
are.
do love Twitter, and I love using it in conjunction with Facebook and Instagram.
Yes.
I think it's
Yeah.
important. You should choose the tools that work for your organization and your congregation.
Yeah.
But it's
All
nice
right,
to have a little,
I want to give a little pitch for tomorrow, and then we'll close this out. Tomorrow is the last seminar of this series, and it is the only one that we will not be recording. So if you are interested in what I'm about to say, you need to come to see it. This will be featuring, the title is Stepping Up During the Pandemic to Save Lives, featuring Hope Williams from USAID, that's the United States Agency for International Development. She's been to Afghanistan and to Fort Dix, and she's going to talk about what you are allowed to say and how you should react to the trauma experiences that they have encountered, both the Afghan families and people who've worked with them, and why this work really matters. So that is sort of directly from the horse's mouth, telling the stories of why what we're raising money for and working for really matters. It will be, I think, a emotionally moving conclusion to this event, and will not be recorded. So if you want to hear her, come. You'll find the link for registering on our website, WJCI.org. Holly, you want to close us out?
I am just so in awe of both of you, Margot and Kaylee. Thank you for coming and sharing these amazing, helpful tools, because we all know that fundraising is challenging. It's intimidating. It's not that much fun.
No.
But as these two women have proven and shown tonight, not impossible. Kaylee, you said you were just like all of us in the beginning, and we were glued to the Syrian refugee crisis and the way that you were handling it in Canada just 5 or 6 years ago, and so in awe of what you're doing. So we know that what you're saying works. And thank you. I am so glad to know you both. We are honored to have you. And now you are our friends, and everyone here, if you want to get in touch with them, let us know. Kaylee and Margot have offered during this discussion to be your resource. And we are your resource, everybody. And we want you to get involved in any way that you can. Remember, there are so many ways to get involved right now. There are people that need us, and that's why you're here. And we'll see you tomorrow night. We hope to hear from Hope Williams, who will be extraordinary. And you all are extraordinary. So thank you for coming.
Thank you all.
I mean it. Thank you so much.
And don't forget the Monday meeting too.
Yes, Lois, I was just writing to you. That will go out to the group of Riverdale, et cetera. There are people on this chat this seminar that are not from the area of Riverdale.
Correct. That's a private meeting, but we'll be having definitely other sessions, no matter where your group is in the process, whether you're ready to jump into host grouping or you just want to help out because we are in a crisis. There are people on this call that I'm honored to say, Frank Pearson from Neighbors for Refugees, thank you. And so many others who are doing this work or want to step into this work. And just let us know what you want to do, because we're going to work with you and we're going to get you there, and you're going to do whatever you can. And remember, and this is the motto and the mantra of WJCI, everything you do, whether it be big or small, clicking to buy something on Amazon, taking kids to a movie for the first time in their lives. And Kaylee, you're smiling because you totally relate to me, can't you? Taking women to the arcade for the first time, which I did last week. I took Afghan women to the arcade. It was so meaningful. You can all do it. This is their moment. This is your time. This is our history, a moment in history, and we're going to help you get there. So thank you so much. See you tomorrow night. See you whenever. God bless. Have a
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Kaylee, you are extraordinary.
That was so fun.